Today, let's talk about ranked choice voting. Here's an article that just came out recently from the Federalist. Ranked choice voting is a nightmare, and it's on the ballot in Nevada. Transitioning from a traditional primary system to ranked choice voting is like going from algebra to calculus. The electoral battleground of Nevada could become the next state to adopt a ranked choice voting system for future primary and general elections. Set to appear on the ballot for the upcoming midterm elections, the initiative, if successfully passed, would amend the Constitution of Nevada by implementing a ranked choice voting system for both state and federal primary and general elections in which primaries would be open to all voters regardless of political party. Under such a system, voters would rank their top 5 preferred primary candidates, with the top 5 overall vote getters advancing to the general contest. In the general election, if a candidate fails to garner an outright majority, more than 50%, the candidate who has the fewest first preference votes would be eliminated, with their votes redistributed based on the second preference for those individual ballots. Such a process would continue until the final 2 candidates, or when one candidate reached a majority. While largely ignored by American corporate press, the ballot initiative to completely overhaul Nevada's election system has silently been gaining traction among state voters. During the first quarter of 2022, Nevada Voters First, a political action committee devoted to the expansion of ranked choice voting in the state, and other supporters of the measure raised approximately $2.2 million to assist in advancing the passage of the initiative. Moreover, a recent survey of nearly 1,000 registered voters conducted by the Nevada Independent and OH Predictive Insights found growing support among Nevadans for ranked choice voting, with 42% of those surveyed supporting the 2022 ballot initiative and 27% opposing. Most notable in the poll's findings, however, is that nearly one-third, 32% of Nevada voters, hold no opinion of the proposed amendment, signaling that a significant segment of the electorate remains seemingly unaware of the complexities associated with ranked choice voting. Such sentiments were expressed by Mike Noble, the chief research and managing partner of OH Predictive Insights, who said transitioning from a traditional primary system to a ranked choice system is like going from algebra to calculus. And I would read the rest of this, but I want to take you to a video to explain a little bit more about the different types of voting. And I think this is called also a instant runoff. Let's watch a video from Ted Ed to give you a little bit more insight into some different kinds of voting, and then we'll talk a little bit more.
Imagine we want to build a new spaceport at one of 4 recently settled Martian bases and are holding a vote to determine its location. Of the 100 colonists on Mars, 42 live on West Base, 26 on North Base, 15 on South Base.
While we're doing this, I want you to keep in mind how this can work on voting districts, and that this is 4 choices, which is, someone's got to determine how many choices are allowed.
And 17 on East Base. For our purposes, let's assume that everyone prefers the spaceport to be as close to their base as possible, and will vote accordingly. What is the fairest way to conduct that vote? The most straightforward solution would be to just let each individual cast a single ballot and choose the location with the most votes. This is known as plurality voting, or first past the post. In this case, West Base wins easily, since it has more residents than any other, and yet most colonists would consider this the worst result.
And the decision in that case is affecting the majority of people, and the majority of people voted for their choice, actually where they are based at, to put the base. And, some would consider that fair. But keep in mind how this can work with voting districts and big cities within voting districts, because it's kind of the same concept.
Given how far it is from everyone else. So, is plurality vote really the fairest method? What if we tried a system like instant runoff voting, which accounts for the full range of people's preferences rather than just their top choices? Here's how it would work. First, voters rank each of the options from 1 to 4, and we compare their top picks. South receives the fewest votes for first place, so it's eliminated. Its 15 votes get allocated to those voters' second choice, East Base, giving it a total of 32. We then compare top preferences and cut the last place option again. This time, North Base is eliminated. Its residents' second choice would have been South Base, but since that's already gone, the votes go to their third choice. That gives East 58 votes over West's 42, making it the winner. But this doesn't seem fair either.
Yeah, I mean, think about, we already have a low turnout for votes, a low amount of people that follow politics. This is another level of confusion. And they're calculating it for everyone, every single person voted. You know, if you have 100 people, how many are actually going to vote? And who decides how many are eligible for the ranked choice voting ballot? Right here you have just 4 locations, so they only have 4 choices on there. But what if you had 100 candidates? You're starting to see how the confusion can grow and how long it can take, especially if you're doing round after round, eliminating the lowest score of all of the candidates until you get to a majority candidate. Some of them just allow for a one-time vote and then they start ranking the points, which seems to me like it leaves a lot of room for error and stuff like that, especially if a person just voted for one and didn't put their second, third, fourth, fifth choice. You know, you're making it so that a person can win with a very small majority just because they were like a second or third choice, and the majority candidate could actually lose. And it really doesn't make sense mathematically when you think about it in those contexts. You know, the time, the confusion, it's making the voting less effective. You could strategically play it. You can vote against another candidate, put them low on there just to strategically cast your vote against them while you're counting for your favorite, especially in round after round.
Not only did East start out in second to last place, but a majority ranked it among their 2 least preferred options. Instead of using rankings, we could try voting in multiple rounds, with the top 2 winners proceeding to a separate runoff. Normally, this would mean West and North winning the first round, and North winning the second. But the residents of East Base realize that while they don't have the votes to win, they can still skew the results in their favor. In the first round, they vote for South Base instead of their own, successfully keeping North from advancing. Thanks to this tactical voting by East Base residents, South wins the second round easily, despite being the least populated. Can a system be called fair and good if it incentivizes lying about your preferences? Maybe what we need to do is let voters express a preference in every possible head-to-head matchup. This is known as the Condorcet method.
Round
Consider
after round
one matchup,
after round.
West versus North. All 100 colonists vote on their preference between the two, so that's West's 42 versus the 58 from North, South, and East, who would all prefer North. Now, do the same for the other 5 matchups. The victor will be whichever base wins the most times. Here, North wins 3 and South wins 2. These are indeed the 2 most central locations, and North has the advantage of not being anyone's least preferred choice. So, does that make the Condorcet method an ideal voting system in?
Yeah, I would say no. So what you're talking about here again is all the candidates. If you had 10 candidates or 20 candidates or 100 candidates, how are you supposed to know enough about all the candidates to do a fair comparison? This goes against the two-party system where most candidates have a general idea of what their candidate is about, and we have primaries that give others the opportunity to challenge that specific party member, where minute differences can be ironed out, debated, where a person will be found to be more aligned with the party or more likely to support the party platforms than if you have a multitude of choice wildcard system. And if you have 9 candidates on a ballot and have a debate, how much are you going to hear from each? What if there is more? What if there's more than 9? Again, who decides that number of candidates that are allowed in there? You know, if 9 candidates is more fair, what about 20? Is that more fair? A third choice on the ballot, an independent, doesn't get much of a vote because I think people understand the wild card nature of that third choice, and you want the final winner to win with a majority. And if you have 2 candidates, that's generally fair. When you start throwing in others in there, that can have someone win without a majority. You would think that that's what primaries and things like that are for. And at the same time, you can see how that system pits, the 2 political parties against one another, which is not necessarily a good thing because it's either one or the other, and they become very polar where it's the choices are more and more on opposite sides of the spectrum. So it's not perfect, but speaking of majority, the system has a representative republic system baked into it so that the majority actually doesn't rule on the large scale. And if you have large cities, you can see where that could be a problem. There's the large city could dictate policies for how rural Americans live, and they live in a very different way. And large states could end up dominating nationally. California with its huge population, and that's the Electoral College essentially keeps that from happening. It's set in the Constitution. It can't be changed without an amendment. And increasingly you have local governments moving towards this, and even states like Nevada considering ranked choice voting. And someone has to decide how many candidates. Someone decided this is a better system, and a yes-no democracy vote will decide. But I wonder if people truly understand, the complexity, the lack of investment in research for most voters, and what ultimately it can mean for a non-majority winner to win.
General, not necessarily. Consider an election with 3 candidates. If voters prefer A over B and B over C, but prefer C over A, this method fails to select a winner. Over the decades, researchers and statisticians have come up with dozens of intricate ways of conducting and counting votes, and some have even been put into practice. But whichever one you choose, it's possible to imagine it delivering an unfair result. It turns out that our intuitive concept of fairness actually contains a number of assumptions that may contradict each other. It doesn't seem fair for some voters to have more influence than others, but nor does it seem fair to simply ignore minority preferences or encourage people to game the system. In fact, mathematical proofs have shown that for any election with more than 2 options, it's impossible to design a voting system that doesn't violate at least some theoretically desirable criteria. So while we often think of democracy as a simple matter of counting votes, it's also worth considering who benefits from the different ways of counting them.
So that goes to say that the 2-party system has been deemed to be the most fair, and when you throw in another person, that's where it starts violating those things. And of course, we got to remember the primaries is getting that candidate to the point of being a party representative, and it's very complex. It's complex. There's no way, shape, or form to say it. There's other solutions out there that people have, suggested. Sortition is very interesting, which is you just randomly choose someone. You randomly elect someone to be in government. There's all kinds of crazy ideas out there for the way voting should happen. And a lot of the left-leaning states are starting to go to the idea of just like a straight democracy where whoever gets the most votes. But the problem is you've got serious concentration in blue states, in blue cities, of blue voters, and that can throw everything off. And then they would be in charge of what the entire country's politics are. And we don't even have term limits in Congress, which seems like, to me, would be a good way to reduce stale ideas and the partisan do-nothings and get the age down of some of these people that have been in, Congress and the presidency well into their elder years. Whatever you think, the issue is certainly complicated. Thanks for watching.